I do have some other news stories I want to go over, which I will. But what I wanted to, this is the other quote unquote explosion, the other big thing that's kind of blowing up is war. So as you guys know, we're getting ready to kick off. Israel said that they're getting ready for something big. I think China and Russia and the Middle East, they know that the United States is weak right now. Yes, England's on fire. We'll talk about that as well. But I'm going to start, where is it? Right here. So this is from 11 hours ago. Russian arms landing in Tehran fuels Middle East tensions. There was a funny post that was going around on X, and basically it was all the pizza. This was Friday night, this past Friday night. All the pizza shops were 3 times as busy as usual, and all the bars were 10% as busy as usual, meaning that everybody in Washington, D.C. was ordering pizza, and they weren't going to the bars. They were stuck at work late, figuring something out. And Iran said something big is coming. This is from 11 hours ago. Russian arms landing in Tehran fuels Middle East tensions. German Daily Bild reports that Russian Il-76, which Russians typically use to transport weaponry, landed in Tehran over the weekend. In addition, Russian propagandists are spreading the theory that this is connected to Moscow's involvement in Iran's plan to attack on Israel. The situation in the Middle East is the most tense it's been in months, and it's further escalation of the ongoing conflict in various fronts between Israel and Iran, as well as their allies, the Palestinians, Lebanese, and Yemeni Houthi movements. Now, notice how they've worded this, okay? Well, of course, the media is going to say that Iran is just weeks away from a nuke. They've been saying that since the 1990s. Don't look, our news outlets right now for the West are as bad as Pravda, so don't believe anything they say. They've been goading us into a conflict with Iran. But I think it's one the United States is going to regret, and I'll explain that in a moment. But notice here in this story, they say it's an escalation between Israel and Iran. In this story, that's what they say from 11 hours ago. They're not saying it's an escalation between Israel and Palestine. They're saying it's an escalation between Israel and Iran. So they're trying to now tie Palestine to Iran and Israel to the United States, and they're trying to get this battle going. You see what I'm saying? They say on Tuesday, the military leader Fuad Shakur was ended in an Israel attack on Beirut. On Wednesday, in an attack on Tehran, also attributed to Israel. The political leader Ismail Haniyeh, he's been ended, and that happened just a couple days ago on Wednesday. They say both the Iranian leaders as well as Palestinians have already announced a retaliation. German Bild reports that a Russian Il-76 showed up and that they have anti-aircraft systems on board. Newspapers emphasize that there's no evidence to support these claims, but the cooperation between the Kremlin and Tehran is no secret. It intensified after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. The Russians are using, among other things, Iranian-made drones, Shahed in Ukraine, which are used for fighting night raids on targets in Ukraine. Israel's preparing for strikes. They're down in a bunker now, apparently, that also still connected to their command center, but they're in bunkers now in Israel, preparing for such a hit. So that's 11 hours ago. I didn't drill down into the necessarily the ending of the guy. I'm more interested in the bigger picture of things. I don't care how they ended the leader of, I'm not interested in that. That's Okay, neat. Drone, missile, whatever. It's more, what's the bigger ramification? What's the bigger outcome of all of this? That's really what matters for us. You know what I mean? This is from Sky News. Russia and China are standing behind Iran. I will pop this up so you guys can hear what Sky News. Now, this is Richard Kemp, a former British commander. We'll hear his opinion on the matter.
Vice President Kamala Harris met with Benjamin Netanyahu, and afterwards she talked about the Israel war not being binary. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. And she said she wasn't going to stay silent about wanting an end to the war, wanting a ceasefire. How do you think the Biden administration and a possible Kamala Harris administration will mean for the Middle East long term? There seems to be a fair bit of chaos within the Biden administration, but think ahead. If we do have Kamala as the leader of the free world, what does that mean for Israel?
Well, I think it'll be a disaster if it happens for Israel, but also for the rest of the world. We've seen the consequences of the Biden approach.
I'm going to just throw a pin in that real quick. Trump put sanctions on the Middle East. Trump was tough on them. Trump talked many times that if you do anything that is contrary to what we've agreed upon, I'll drop a nuke on you. I'll drop one right on Berlin or right on wherever. Beijing, not Berlin, Beijing. I'll drop one right on Moscow. And supposedly, Putin said you wouldn't really do that. And Trump kind of went, well, you never know. And that was enough to kind of make Russia say, all right, we're going to chill out a little bit. But now when you've got the Biden administration giving Iran money to try to, buy them, and you've got the Biden administration giving money to ISIS, yes, let me say that again slowly. Biden gave money to ISIS, even though Trump had at the time, pretty much wiped them off the face of the earth. Come to find out, Biden's actually building them back up again. And there's two reasons why that could be happening. Number one, if the United States keeps giving cash out, these cash giveaways, it means these other countries need to keep dealing in the United States dollar, in the US dollar, which is a way to prop up the value of the dollar. Because if you don't have a petrodollar, but it's used for buying military equipment and you've got some of it, you're given it, and you decide to spend it, that will prop it up.
We've seen it in Ukraine, we've seen it in the Middle East, we've seen it elsewhere, the results of what is effectively a weak administration seeking to appease its enemies. And I think we would see a continuation of that kind of approach by Kamala Harris if she does take over. So it's going to be devastating. And we shouldn't forget, of course, in any of these discussions that it's not just Iran that's behind what's going on in the Middle East. Standing behind Iran is Russia and China. And particularly China is looking to see how the US responds to what's going on here. And I think they've been encouraged by what they've seen. And so I think there's every likelihood that if Kamala takes over and continues this indecisive, weak approach to foreign policy, it's going to just encourage and provoke China to who knows what. We know what their potential plans are with Taiwan and elsewhere in the region.
I'll do a summary here in a moment, but I think this might be very, very, very bad, and I'll explain. The sanctions against Russia and China, the Iran, produced zero results. No results, says U.S. Senator Rand Paul. Not going to read down through it. Don't need to. That's all you need to know. The sanctions against Russia, China, and Iran produced no results. Why? Number one, they're off the petrodollar. They're now selling and moving oil to each other. Russia's moving the oil and its LNG, liquid natural gas. They're moving it from they're moving it through India. They're moving it through China. They're moving it through the Middle East. It forced them to move away from the petrodollar faster. It moved them to find alternative routes to move this stuff. More and more people think now that the the pipeline between Russia and, was it Germany or Poland? The pipelines were actually by the U.S. The sanctions didn't work, and they've gotten stronger and stronger. Now you've got North Korea. North Korea's weapons industry is going global thanks to help from Russia and China. It may not have attracted much attention in recent months with global attention focused elsewhere, but the international sanctions monitoring regime on North Korea has been disbanded, raising concerns about the unimpeded flow of North Korean weapons to global hotspots from Ukraine to Gaza. Enforcement of the UN's sanctions against North Korea has actually been eroding for years. The final coup de grace came from March when Russia vetoed the renewal of a committee known as the Panel of Experts, which was tasked with monitoring and reporting on North Korean sanction violations. While UN sanctions are technically still in force, and the United States, European Union, Australia, Japan, and other countries still abide by them, Russia and China do not. Because they don't need to. Because Russia and China now are strong enough that it doesn't matter about the sanctions. They've now found alternative ways to maneuver around the global economy without the support of the G7. This is from February 2023, last year, but this is again important. Iran deepens ties with China. Amid rising tensions with Western powers, Iranian President Raisi and Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to strengthen security and economic cooperation. They signed 20 agreements, including on trade, transportation, information technology, tourism, agriculture, crisis response, that is a key one, that could be worth billions of dollars. China would invest in joint projects, high-speed rail system linking Tehran and Mashhad, and improvements to Imam Khomeini Airport. And the last one I'm going to talk about before I give a little thought summary we have. North Korea deploys hundreds of missile launchers near the southern border. This is from 7 hours ago. 7 hours ago. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen a ceremony marking the transfer of 250 tactical ballistic missile launchers to the country's border with South Korea, according to state media. At an historic event in the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, on Sunday, Kim inspected the new attack weapons that it claimed he had personally designed. Doubtful. Which he said were part of the rapid and ongoing development of North Korea's self-defense capabilities. The launchers will be used to attack or threaten the South, Colonel Lee Sung-jung, spokesperson for the Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, said in remarks reported by South Korea's Yonhap news agency. Placing the missile launchers close to the border area on the divided peninsula indicates they are designed for short-range launches, the South Korean military added. Already tense relations between the two nations on the divided Korean peninsula have deteriorated as North Korea draws closer to Russia while pushing forth with missile testing and nuclear weapons development programs. In late December, Pyongyang put its military production on war footing. As the grave political and military situation on the ground, the peninsula reached its limit. So now let's look at the summary of this stuff, right? And I have a little bit more to talk about, but let's look at a summary. You've got North Korea putting 200 or so short-range, 250 tactical ballistic missile launchers on their southern border with South Korea, which is friendly to the U.S. You've got China eyeing Taiwan, which is friendly to the U.S. You've got U.S. depleting its munitions to Ukraine to try to fight off Russia. That means we're low on munitions here in the United States. You've got Japan's economy falling down. Who says that China's not eyeing Japan? You've got Israel looking down the barrel at Iran and vice versa. Who's to say that there isn't a move by Russia on Ukraine, by Iran on Israel, by China on Taiwan, and maybe even Japan, and by North Korea to South Korea. Who's to say that doesn't all happen at once? If they are all kind of on the same page and they're all working together, and they know that the U.S. has weak leadership, that we haven't been arming up and preparing, what's to say that this doesn't kick off? What happens if there's a move by Iran and North Korea and China and Russia all at once? I mean, we are at that point where we've got the fourth turning, and there's going to be a big play. And so all of this happens at once. All of it happens at once. How does the U.S. respond? Do you think that the U.S. responds with the nukes? Or do they try to with traditional battleships and aircraft carriers? We'd be too spread thin. Now, here's what happens then. Israel, losing, decides to drop one of the big ones. They decide to drop a nuke. If they do that, Iran or China gives them one and says, okay, drop one back. Then the whole area is turned to glass. It goes big. Now, does that mean that, absolute destruction of the world? No, I don't think so personally. I think what would happen is North and South Korea would probably have an exchange. I think South Korea would be okay. Taiwan would probably be lost to China. Ukraine, if a large portion of Ukraine, if not all of Ukraine, falls, I think Israel will be okay, because that's where the United States will focus its energy, because Israel. So I think it's a way that Russia could take Ukraine. I think China does take Taiwan. I don't think North Korea will take South Korea. But I do think that we'd lose Taiwan there. And I think all the focus would be on Israel. See, because what they're going to do is they're going to spread the United States so thin that by putting all its focus on Israel and things going crazy there, it gives China the opportunity to take Taiwan, and it allows Russia to take Ukraine. That's my bet. I mean, I may be completely wrong. I'm just guessing here. But out of all those conflicts, the United States will back Israel the most. They just will, because of the funding and the Jewish state and the rest of that. I think this will be used as an opportunity for China to go after Taiwan. And yes, Taiwan is necessary for chips and drones, but here's the thing. If China can take Taiwan, let's say Taiwan in a self-sacrifices blows up all the chip manufacturing sites. They say, okay, we're going to be taken over by China. We don't want China to have this technology. Blow it. Boom. There go all your chips, which means there go all your cars and your refrigerators and your solar power and everything. That's everything. Let's say that China, what if just during this exercise, what if China just blockades Taiwan? They don't even take over Taiwan. They just blockade them. No more chips. And they know that the United States is short on munitions and short on and drones and all the rest of this. You need chips for that. All they have to do is blockade, and they would choke out the supply of munition creations. Intel was given something like, I don't know how many billions of dollars by the United States to ramp up its chip production and to build new facilities. That was a year or two ago. Too late. Too late. None of it's been built. None of it's happening. So if maybe China doesn't take Taiwan, maybe just China surrounds them and clogs off all their shipments of chips. That's a possibility. Or China goes to take Taiwan, and Taiwan doesn't blow up the chip manufacturing, and now China has all the chip manufacturing technologies, and the United States has none, and China says, we're not going to sell you any. Could go either way.